not what it was meant to be. You no. L-O-V-E was meant to be the master key of peacefulness, happiness, and together. I would like to see that day when love will come to stay. One, sing it with me. It would be happiness to see, yeah. Such a unity, I'm telling you. One, everybody know. Love to the world, yes, is all that I can say, yes. Deep down in my soul, I would like to see that day of peacefulness, happiness, and togetherness. I would like to see that day when love will come to stay. One, sing it with me. It would be happiness to see, yeah, such a unity. One, everybody sing it. My dream, yeah. My dream, oh, yeah. I look around and the most
You're not getting it?
that I can see.
All right, let me send it back to you.
John,
Your email book.
humanity, no peacefulness, no happiness, no together. But I would like to see that day when love would come to stay. One, sing it with me now. Yeah. It would be happiness to see. Such a unity, I'm telling you. One love. And love, because the world is all that I can say, deep down in my soul, I would like to see that day, your peacefulness, happiness, and together, yes. I would like to see that day when love would come to stay. One love, sing it with me now. It would be happiness to see, yeah. Such a unity, I'm telling you. One love, everybody now. Yeah, thank you very much, spread that love, spread it love. Yeah, my dream, yeah, thank you very much. I am Poverty is hell, and the angels are in paradise, driving in their limousine, where everything is nice and clean. A poor man living in a tinny winny hut, children hungry, nothing in the pot. He gone by the neighbor to beg for some rice. The neighbor under pressure, boy, things ain't nice. He gone in the big shot area to beg. A police put a bullet in his tinny winny leg. He gone in the courts and he lost the case. The prosecutor say he have a bandit face. Poverty is here. Poverty is here. Wake up in the morning and the baby cry. Sugar pan empty, the milk bottle dry. The little boy child on the mango tree. The mango green, cutting up his belly. The young girl body, she wouldn't settle. She wipe, she bumsy with stinny nettle. Toilet paper, they never had. They used to do in the gully by the old backyard. They rub she down and they put she to sleep. The rain come down and the house asleep. Poverty is hell. Poverty is hell. A poor man always dream a lot of dreams. He happy like a puppy when he dream another dream. He dream that he have a new roof on the hut. He dream that he have some good food in the pot. He dream that he have a rich friend named Frank. He dream that he have a lot of cash in the bank. He dream that he pay all his bills for the month. He dream that he have a new car in the front. He dream that he have to go to a vet. He dream that he pocket have a big fat wallet. He wake up in the night and he rush for his pants. All he found in the pocket was a whole lot of hands. Poverty is hell. Oh, don't you know? Poverty is hell. Dumpling, mommy got to slice them thin. A piece for a boy and a piece for a girl. A piece for the neighbor daughter mole. The cat in the corner looking to beg. Little Jack corner kick him in the leg. Go in the room and look for a rat. The rat in the roof, he know about cat. Now the cat see a chicky jam, yeah. He rush for the chicky jam, but the poor little chicky jam flew away like a chicky jam. Then cockroach gone in the condensed milk. Mama get pets for the condensed milk. Who leave the condensed milk open? Come here, you picky head, good for nothing. Mama get pets and she blood get that. She drops some lash in there, you know what? Poverty is hell. Poverty is hell. A piece for the neighbor daughter mole. The cat in the corner looking to beg. Little Jack corner kick him in the leg. Go in the room and look for a rat. The rat in the roof, he know about cat. Now the cat see a chicky jam, yeah. The rat rush for the chicky jam. But the party chicky jam flew away like a chicky jam. Then cockroach gone in the condensed milk. Mama get vexed for the condensed milk. Who leave the condensed milk open? Come here, you picky head, good for nothing. Mama get vexed and she blood get hot. She drops some lash in there, you know what? Mama did it. Mama did it.
I am glad. I am glad I was born a West Indian. I am so glad. And I'm glad I love my identity, because that music, the greatest gift that God has given mankind, is that calypso. Poverty is hell. Winston Bailey, the shadow. He didn't have to be in Guyana today to witness 58% poverty. It is what we call the Caribbean Black prophetic tradition. He prophesies Guyana. Poverty is hell. And all of us can identify with the lyrics of that music. I'm retired now. And some days, I'm glad I'm retired from teaching at the university. But some days, when I hear that kind of lyrics, I want to crawl back into the universe, because my best days was when I taught those lyrics as texts. No book. The students, white people, children, Hispanic children, Black American children, and some West Indians, they had to study those lyrics. Oh, and what a joy it was for a little boy from Buxton teaching the lyrics of a little boy from Tobago or Trinidad or Guyana, St. Lucia or Barbados to so-called foreigners. Louis Bennett, the folk poet from Jamaica, called it colonization in reverse. Colonization in reverse, and you hear? I love it. I am one West Indian, one African, one Guyanese. I enjoy poking my finger in people's eye. You know why? Because I was not meant to be. Last night I did some teaching, and I know you all enjoy. I had to teach Leno Craig. You know, these boys, bright little boys, them, you know. As I said last night, they buy bright more than me. 50 times over. But he doesn't have the tools to analyze politics. Oh, the PNC has not made the case to Indians. You look at the election the PNC won. As I pointed out last night, 1964. And we're going to talk about that tonight with some PNC boys. Dr. Campbell and Ganesh Mahaipaul. 1964, 2011, 2015, and I'm maintaining that in a rigged election of 2020, they came within one seat of winning. And when they open the box and you see what's in the box, they won that election by at least 3 seats. So 64, 2011, 2015, 2020, what all of them have in common? The PNC went into coalition. They won with coalition. So anybody want to give advice to the PNC, that's the advice they should give them. And it's my humble opinion that was the advice that they were given, we were given in 2025, and we ignored it, and our base put licks on we. People telling the PNC, oh, go into the Indian community and make your case. Crossover vote. Let me tell you something. I taught politics for 30 odd years. I studied for 50 years. I in for 50 years. And let me tell you this. You win an election with your base and you lose it with your base. If your base gives you 35% and the crossover give you 10%, it's still 45. You ain't winning nothing. Crossover is when your base carry you to the dome out. You know why it's dome out? Your base carry you to 45. And then the crossover come in and give you 7 more and make you 52. But if your base carry you to 35 and you get 7, that's 42. At teaching, because that's what God blessed me with. And them little boys like Leno Craig. Leno is a bright boy, but he doesn't have political tools to analyze politics. The first thing you do in politics, there's a political science. You observe. And you observe that the PNC, whenever it has won in coalition. In 64, it bring its African base. And the YAR bring the Amerindian base. And the black redskin middle class, Georgetown, some of them who vote for UF. And the Indian urban vote, because the PPP did not contest the seats that UF was favored to win. So they win their supporters vote UF a teaching. God bless me with her. And so the crossover vote came via the UF. Come to 2011. PNC bring its African base. And the Indian crossover came via who? The AFC. 2015, the PNC bring its African base, and the crossover come from who? The AFC. In 2020, by that time, most of the Indians went back to the PPP. But the PNC was able to run up its African base to close to 80%, compensated for some of the Indians who went back. Your base. And the polls, the internal polls that the APNU did, showed that if they had brought out 84% of their base, they'd win, and they did win. It's not that crossover vote is not important. It's that your method. Or people say you not get Dagon back. The coalition method means that you are collating with people or groups that can easier bring the crossover vote. In 2025, nobody bring Mohammed didn't bring no crossover vote, you know. When you add up Mohammed and APNU and FGM at 29, how we get? I mean, I get no crossover vote. Mohammed not bring no crossover vote. Mohammed vote is PNC base. He ain't bring no crossover from the PPP. I'm going to beat you all in class. Let me stop. Mohammed didn't bring, if Mohammed did bring crossover vote, opposition would have win like 2011. Mohammed did not bring crossover vote. Why the hell are you all beating PNC? But crossover vote is not only APNU. Black people vote against, you know. they vote against PPP. PPP trial thing. Black people, black people. This people must analyze properly. It's not only PNC 2/3 of the base because 1/3 went to Mohammed and 1/3 stand home. But they vote against PPP. Jack Dio, I'm bringing in them by just now. Jack Dio said, oh, Norton is a political scientist. And you know the first thing you do is protect your base. And the PPP protected his base. That's how you win elections. Norton tried to protect his base, but there was too much of base against him. But Jagdio is correct. Jagdio is correct. To win an election, you win your base force. Don't let people put your belly pumping, tell you about crossover. You need crossover, but crossover only makes sense when your base is intact. 30 and 7 is 37. 45 and 7 is 52. I'm teaching. Jack Dior said, you must protect your base. He meet me in parliament and he tell me the same thing. Basically, he said, David, why are you so stupid? Mr. Barrett, when I was preaching 2 things before election, I was preaching run up your base and coalition. You beat me up and said it's racist. And Mr. last night, me know tell you what he tell me. But he knew I was right. And if you're PPP and David Hines is preaching the right formula for them to win, you beat him down. I understand that. When PPP beat me, I know I right. And I was preaching 2 formula. Well, 1 formula. Run up your base and coalition. We didn't run up our base and we didn't collate. And we didn't go to book. The last thing I want to tell you all, third party don't have base. WPA never had a base. We borrow disgruntled PNC people and PPP people. And when the dust was settling, then people went back home. The guy never had a base. He used the Catholic Church and so influence for them Amerindians and the capitalist thing to get a couple of black people and couple of Indian people. And when Burnham come to power and he get power, them redskin black people gone to PNC. Them urban Indian gone to PNC because power. Power. The logic of power. You have come 61, 64 by 68, they're done with. But WPA didn't have election. WPA, power from mid-70s to the end of the 80s, done with, once election come. Third party don't have base. AFC come in, they get some disgruntled Africans in 2006. They carry the PNC down to 42, to 34. And Robert Corbyn said, coalition is the answer. He come to your arch enemy, the WPA, and he said, by the way, hook up. And 2011, APNU got 43. From 34, they go right back to 43. Coalition. And then the AFC come in with the other 7, and you get 50-something. AFC run 2006, 2011, 2015 by 2020. Black people left them in 2011 and Indian people left them in 2020. Go back. Third parties don't have bases. We borrow base, electoral base. You may have other bases. You may have a protest base because PPP and PNC don't like the protesting. Protest and election don't go together. So when the people in the protest mood, they just go somewhere else. And when things level off, them come back. Everybody's asking what will happen to Win. Guided by history, I don't think Win is going to be any different from DGR, WPA, and AFC. I am teaching because God bless me with some little thing. Politics, nowadays with this social media thing, everybody a political analyst, and sometimes you want to vomit when something you hear. But Teacher George teach in Buxton. He said, when you're there politics, a little bit, he said, "By come, me notice you like politics." I say, "Yes, Teacher George." He said, "Let me give you advice. When you're there politics, you got part your stomach in two. Part for vomit and part for eat." And sometimes a big part of me that's want vomit with me here for political analysis. But it's a sign of the times. Tonight, we have on with us the leads, my leaders, in the parliamentary caucus, APNU parliamentary caucus, Dr. Terrence Campbell and Ganesh Mahaipaul. Last week I had Vincent Alexander on, masterpiece of a presentation. I had Takumo Gunse and Adriana Thomas, and what I call the other perspective, the radical perspective. Sometimes you don't want to touch it. That's when me be like, sometimes you say, "Oh God, it's what?" You know what I mean? But we are part of the Guyana Caribbean mix. You had to have radicals. You always have to have the radicals. When Toussaint gone, the Dessalines take over. You gotta get Toussaint, you gotta get Dessalines, you gotta get the whole mix. On Thursday, them by from Linden, light up the place. Light up the place. What massacre? What Wisma massacre? Talk to me. By Shama Solomon, bad like a old bag of dark flea. He and Dr. Adams and Apostle. And then by tear up this place here Thursday night. And then Friday I had Amanza. And Amanza place is not where she is. She places back when she moment she had the party, and she know that. And but we had a wonderful gaff and wide coverage, wide. People disagreed with her, and so on. But she asked the question. She asked me the question, if you remember, why all them rest who go to PPP? She made the point that she did not go to the PPP, but she getting more beat up than them who gone to the PPP. And I will tell her the God spell truth, Mr. Nelson. In my village, he never said God spell. He said, "Teacher, may I tell you the God spell truth." And I told her the God spell truth because people feel that them who go to PPP, maybe that's where they belong. But your place is really in your mama and your daddy party. That is why they vex with you more than the rest. Oh boy. Tonight my leaders are on here. Dr. Terrence Campbell, who is the parliamentary lead. Dr. Campbell came on here a year ago, and he made a big splash. And 1 year later, here he is as the parliamentary lead of the APNU. And Ganesh Mahaipaul, and let me say this, and I'll say it in front of Ganesh's face, and I don't care if he vexes. I don't think there's anybody in the National Assembly of Guyana who understands how Parliament works more than Ganesh. Ganesh walk. You all may not know, but people stand up and stand in order. Ganesh, where is he standing in order? 42, 31. and so on both sides, on both sides. And when I made this remark, one of my party members said, because he takes Parliament seriously. And you have to have a particular gift to take a jokey place seriously. Because our Parliament is really a jokey place. But I think Ganesh Mahaipaul makes you step back and say, well, it may be a jokey place because the PPP make it a jokey place. But in the final analysis, it's a very serious place. And I don't care if Ganesh vexed with me, but I needed to say that in front of his face. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101, the only place to be at 7 o'clock in the evening. We do this out of love and duty. And that's why we always say, we love you. We love you. And we're going to talk things here that people are afraid to talk. Not because we are not politically correct, but we determine our own correctness. George Lamin, the West Indian Barbadian novelist, said we may not be able to determine the price of oil or sugar on the world market, but we're able to define who we are. Sovereignty. Sovereignty. Sovereignty, not of a geographical space, but sovereignty of the imagination. Professor Nelson Ford said the combination of the creative intellect and the creative imagination is what makes us West Indian tick. Or you hear it again. The combination of the creative intellect and the creative imagination. We have not built skyscrapers and big things. What we have given the world is our minds. The Caribbean mind, the Guyanese mind, equal to none. From Garvey and Sylvester Williams to Rodney and Franz Fanon, George Padmore and Stokely Carmichael, Michael Manley, Fobbs Burnham and Cheddy Jagan, the struggle for the new world economic order in the 1970s had to come from West Indians. Fobbs Burnham and Michael Manley had to come. Couldn't come from anywhere else. Given the world the mighty sparrow. And God was giving gifts to Calypsonian, he sparrow all. Trogdor says so. Bob Marley left school when he was 14 and became the principal spokesperson of world liberation in the latter half of the 20th century. Usain Bolt going down, waiting for the gun. And after the gun, he raced to victory, carrying the Caribbean on his shoulders. Sir Isaac Vivian Richards and Garfield Sobers, with ball in hand and bat in hand, became geniuses that cannot be compared. And so when Kemar Roach raced in a few days ago and shattered the stumps of the Sri Lankan number 10 batsman and celebrated 300 wickets, the Caribbean came alive. We are what we are, and that's the way it's gonna be. Ganesh Mahaipaul and Dr. Terrence Campbell, you are responsible for nothing that I said before. That's why I bring you all on after done talk me talk. All right? And you know, when you dance and you put on the dance, Campbell, you go, I don't, well, my pal would know too, because they do wedding house dance and so on. You know, when you dance and then by a watch, you take your foot and you rub it out. You know what? So may rub out. So you all are not responsible. You know why? Because you all are leaders. You all are my leaders, but I have the latitude to carry on regardless, as we Guyanese would say. You all don't have that latitude, but if you all want to take the latitude tonight, it's up to you all. But say you all don't know me. I did not tell you all to do it. Good evening, my brothers.
Good evening, David. I see that you used to do three-step dance because you know when you go to the dance and you do a three-step, you're doing a fancy three-step, you rub out, you tell them boys you want to see them move, man.
You rub it out. You rub it out. I used to be a old quick man, you know, Terrence. And now and then
Listen,
yes, go ahead.
I know quite but rub out we used to use when you're doing three-step.
When you're doing three-step.
When you make your move your three-step, you tell them by you rub your heel on the ground and say by rubbed out because they're watching and they want copy.
Well, with quick nowadays, them by a wind up. They might go behind them girl and they wind up. So when old timers like me step in the ring and you do the quick dance, you watch them little by and you rub out, you say. And so it's so good to have you all on tonight for a talk on APNU parliamentary politics and related events. Ganesh, let me come to you because, as they say, you have institutional knowledge, and we want to start with Parliament. And I'm going to ask you a question that I know as a student of politics that you are going to be able to deal with analytically and creatively, like some other people may have to take out my wild cane last night and bust the tail. What is different in this parliament, the 13th parliament, from the 12th parliament that you served in?
Well, I don't think that there is any difference per se, because in our parliamentary democracy, once you have the majority, whether it is by 1 or 6 or how many numbers you can think about, you're still in control. The 12th parliament, which is the one before this one, the PPP had a majority of 1, and still they dominated by way of passing bills and motions and determined when the parliament would sit. They used their 1-seat majority to do some of the craziest of things you can think about in our democracy, such as removing the then chair of the PAC, who was David Patterson. They also used that 1-seat majority to change the quorum requirement for a public accounts committee. Since 1963 or thereabout, the established public accounts committee always had a quorum of any 3 members. And in 2021, the PPP used its 1-seat majority to change that for it to now constitute 2 members of government side, 2 members of opposition, and the chairperson. And since the introduction of that resolution, we have had seldomly, well, not seldomly, there's no such word as seldomly, we've had
No, you
seldom.
can create words.
In politics, you I learned over the years you got to be linguistically flexible. We seldom met as a PAC since 2021 with that move by that 1-seat majority, and right now we're having issues having public accounts committee, which is really the committee that deals with accountability of taxpayers' money. They also used their one-seat majority to make changes to the 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 act that speaks to our petroleum revenue, that speaks to our oil resource, and they used their one-seat majority to do several crazy things in the 12th Parliament. So there is no significant difference of what happened in 2012 to what is happening right now. In fact, I would go as far as to say they have amplified their disrespect for our parliament in this, the 13th Parliament. After 9 months of our 2025 elections, our parliament met 4 times, 4 sittings we've had. I don't think in the history of our country we have ever had a parliament meeting for only 4 sittings after 9 months of an election. No other parliament in our history can record that. And then when you look at how they are operating with our resources now, trying to run from parliamentary scrutiny, they had a meeting of the Economic Service Committee the other day, and they decided with their majority that that committee will meet just once per quarter when it used to meet once a month. And you know, Dr. Hines, I have been following our parliamentary democracy since 2006. And in 2011, we had perhaps the most interesting parliament of our country. And that's because the period 2011 to 2015 was when the PPP was sitting in government, but the opposition was in control of the National Assembly. And when the PPP came to the National Assembly in that period, they had to robustly defend whatever it is that they wanted the parliament to approve. And that is simply because the opposition had that one-seat majority. And you would recall that it was so intense during that period that there was no time for idle behavior. There was no time for nasty, erratic cuss-outs. There was no time for skin-teeth politics, because the PPP understood that they could not have dominated since they did not possess that majority. And now we're seeing a difference because they have the majority. So again, I say to you, to simplify my answer, there is no difference from the 12th Parliament in this, the 13th. Rather, I would say there is an amplification of the gross disrespect which we as members of Parliament faced in the 12th Parliament.
Thank you very much, Ganesh. Please share the link. I notice you all are coming in quite a lot of you are coming into class this evening. Please share the link. We still have a few seats open. Dr. Campbell, you're a rookie like me to this parliamentary story. And tell me, based on your observations thus far, did it meet your expectations? Has Parliament exceeded your expectations? Is it a place that you feel that it's worth taking some time away from making money to get into? Talk to me.
You know, David, I think I can answer for both of us. Parliament has not met our expectations. What we've seen, and this didn't start now. We saw it in, as Ganesh pointed out, in the 12th Parliament. The PPP moved to alter the quorum for the Public Accounts Committee. Subsequently, and again, Ganesh referenced the Economic Services Committee. where the PPP have just changed the number of meetings from once a month to once every quarter. This is despite the fact that we have the fastest growing economy in the world, supposedly. So one would think that there would be need for increased scrutiny. Instead, the PPP has significantly reduced scrutiny. I sit as an alternate in that committee, so I can add a little more flavor to what Ganesh has said by saying that the motion to move to reduce the number of sittings of the Economic Services Committee was brought by none other than the Honorable Zulfikar Mustafa, who is the Minister of Agriculture. And he was ably supported by the Honorable Susan Rajigs, the Minister of Tourism, Industry and Commerce, and the Honorable Bishop Juana Jill, the Minister of Public Infrastructure. And I find it necessary to point out who moved it and who ably supported it, because these are three ministers over which many dark clouds hang. And these were the three ministers, and I intended to make a video about this, and I probably will just snap this. Because these are the three ministers, the Honorable Zulfikar. So many questions have been raised about him in the public domain. And he was the man who I think, I personally, and you referenced cricket earlier, Professor, I would be playing off the back foot. You know, I would be very cautious. I would not be swinging outside the wicket if I were the Honorable Zulfikar, because there are so many questions about me. What I would say, and that he was shameless in moving that motion to reduce the number of meetings of the Economic Services Committee, and hence to reduce the level of scrutiny for the ministries that committee would address. But I like to stray, Professor. When my professor asks me a question, I like to get it a little bit over to dicta. You know, very often, the APNU has been, to my mind, been criticized unfairly. And there is one topical item, and that is GCOM. And they are commissioners, and they are not APNU commissioners, they are opposition commissioners. And they are being blamed now for everything that has gone wrong on GCOM. And the argument is being advanced that they need to be changed. But I want to juxtapose that situation and that argument with the current 13th Parliament and the Economic Services Committee. That committee is being chaired by the Win Party. And the Public Accounts Committee is being chaired by the Win Party. Yet, we are seeing perhaps the old adage in place that the more things change, the more they remain the same. So maybe, and I don't let me say maybe, the issue is not the three opposition commissioners on GCOM, nor the issue is not whether WIN or APNU, control the PAC or the Economic Services Committee. The issue is our constitutional architecture that needs to be changed to deliver a more inclusive governance and to deliver more transparent and accountable governance. Because merely changing the actors in the play will not bring about a different ending. And so, Professor, forgive me for having strayed beyond the question. And venturing into GCOM and the constitutional architecture. But
No, you have not
we,
strayed.
we,
You're on your own way, and a good professor always like own way students because they pull the best out of the professor and in turn pull the best out of themselves because you've preempted where I was going on the question of because Ganesh started out by doing what most of us do. We refer to our parliament or our country as a parliamentary democracy. And then we go on to show how undemocratic the system is and the practice is. So the parliamentary democracy, and Ganesh, don't think you're wrong, it's an aspiration. Nothing is wrong in using it. It's an aspiration. What we have, as Terrence has pointed out, is a parliamentary architecture that does not deliver the quality of democracy that a society like ours demand. And so I come back to you, Ganesh, because Terrence has raised the question of the future of our National Assembly, our legislative branch, as we pursue this era of oil and gas. At the time of independence, the question was who governs. Today, with oil and gas, the question is who controls. Whether you come at it from gender, or you come at it from class, or you come at it from race. That question is foremost who controls. And the parliament, which is the lawmaking body, and the body that disburses money, comes into the limelight. And what I want from you, Ganesh, is how can we deliver governance and representation of a particular quality to our supporters and to the country at large in a parliamentary architecture like the one that Terrence described?
So Doc, let me put it in this context. We are having issues with the current status quo because of the level of disrespect and abuse the People's Progressive Party is taking on the system. When the framers of our Constitution and the framers of our standing orders and the framers of our parliamentary architecture, as you rightly pointed out, when they documented these procedures and rules and manuals and so on, it was not with the intent of utilizing it to disadvantage the parliamentary minority. It was never with that intent. And that is why older parliamentarians who have distinguished themselves from both the PPP and the PNC sides are left amazed at how our parliament is functioning today. Because in their time of service, these very rules existed. These very practices that are documented in the Constitution, in the manual, in the standing orders, and so on. They were all there and they were working and functioning in the best interest of the Guyanese people, with maturity being exemplified by the players. But what we see today with this modern PPP is one where they're abusing the shortcomings, so to speak, of what is documented. So because it is stated, let's take the Amanza Walton Desir situation, for example. Because it is stated in the standing orders that the parliamentary committees must reflect. In fact, I can give you the exact words, and you did say I know the standing order. Thank you for that compliment. It is actually in 94-1. It says that every select committee shall be so constituted as to ensure as far as possible that the balance of parties in the assembly is reflected in the committee. Now, I think mature politicians, though 4 belong to the opposition, mature politicians would have had no issues accepting that we can spare one of our 4 to Amanza's party once there is that agreement between WIN and APNU. So it calls for parliamentary maturity. It calls for big people sense then. Not because, you see, rules were not meant to hamper or humbug or damper the spirit of working together in unity. I'm saying that to say to you that we are examining what should work because of the abuse of what is happening currently. And that is putting our minds as a nation to think of how to correct what is being abused. And perhaps as the youngest among us here, though that is not displayed by picture, since I'm not seeing any gray hair on Terrence's head, nor am I seeing any hair on your head to know if it's gray or black. But as the youngest here, what I would like to see, and with the experience I've gathered over the years in Parliament, what I would like to see is a Parliament where the executive does not sit. The ministers of government should not be a part of the legislative branch of governance. Yes, the PPP got 36 seats. They can find 36 people who don't have to be ministers. The opposition, they got 29. They have their 29 seats. And these ministers of government, they focus on their executive function as part of the government, but they must appear before the legislative arm and defend their policies in their respective ministries, defend their budgetary allocation, defend their position, and account for the monies that will be given to them. The system that we have right now, which is abused by the PPP, and it is the PPP that is causing us to think this way of how to correct what is it that they are taking advantage of. And I again reference the older parliamentarians. If you speak to Jeffrey Thomas, if Ripudaman Prasad was alive, who's from the PPP, and if you speak to several other older MPs or former MPs, Moses Nagamutu has a wealth of experience, so Dinga Lumumba from the PPP side, Henry Jeffrey, go down the line with our MPs who have served in the past. They will tell you that there were times when opposition and government would meet in the caucus rooms or in the committees rooms to iron out and to rationalize and to fix the problems. They would tell you that in 2015 to 2020, even though the APNU had a majority, they would meet with the opposition, who was the PPP at that time, to fix the problem. I have read about Chedi Jagan and Fobbs Borna meeting to fix the problem. Not to abuse the system in its current construct, not to take advantage of the situation, but because of what we're seeing, and I'm being repetitive, because of what we're seeing here in today's Guyana, it is forcing us now to think along the line of constitutional reform and how do we put measures in place to safeguard and strengthen what we call our democracy so that the people of Guyana will be represented to the fullest. And it is unfortunate but necessary because we have to address it if the focus is to be on all Guyanese being treated in an equitable manner, especially when it comes to our resource distribution. And not what we are having right now, where a cabal, a certain percentage of our Guyanese people, in the smaller number that is, getting rich and richer as the days go by, and a larger number of our Guyanese people are struggling to make ends meet. And that is because the resources are not distributed in an equitable manner. And to hide all of that, to hide all of the wrongdoings of the People's Progressive Party, to hide all of the way in which they're distributing our resources selectively, to hide them not wanting to be accountable at the parliamentary level, to hide them not wanting to be transparent and not practicing good governance. They distract the population with distraction politics. They use the social media and they use DPI and NCN to showcase Irfan on a bicycle riding, or him cooking a pot of cook-up, or him dressed in an outfit that is eye-catching to people, and they use that as distraction politics to play on the minds of our people, to play on the soft spots of our people, so that our people will tend to forget the seriousness of what is before us and focus more on the senses. You know, he could ride a bicycle. He look good on a bicycle, meeting the people, he gaffing with the people. He doing all of these kind of things. But that is distraction politics, Doc.
Yeah.
I'll stop here before I go on and on and use up all this time.
Dr. Campbell, our colleague has raised two important points. One, he has raised the point of the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. Constitutions, by their very nature, cannot dot every I and cross every T's. Constitutions don't, and that is why you have implied laws and implied powers and inherent powers and explicit powers. And I know no constitution in the world in which all powers are enumerated explicitly. So constitutions, you can't dot every I and cross every T. And so you have to have a reliance on the spirit of the law. And your colleague is raising that point of the spirit of the law being not taken into consideration, the letter of the law being abused. He also raises a very important point, and that is the question of more separation of powers. As it is, there is no separation of powers in our political system. Again, the framers intended that when a minister comes to parliament, that minister is no longer a minister. That minister is a legislator. But we have seen that with the PPP, the minister comes and he behaves as a member of the executive in the legislature. And so our colleague is raising the question of more separation of powers along the American system, where you don't have somebody representing two branches of government while sitting in one branch. And I would like to have your take on those two issues, because I think they're central to understanding how our system is being abused and how we have to move forward with constitutional reform. So, letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, and more separation of powers to remove executive representatives from the legislature so that the legislature can carry out its function, especially of oversight. If Ashley is Minister of Finance and he's a senior MP, then he is oversighting himself. Ridiculous. But over to you. You have to unmute.
Yeah, thanks, Professor. So, as usual, I'll stray a little bit. I'll start with the first question. I'll stray a little bit, and then I'll end with the last one. So, we inherited and still have many of the essential features of a Westminster Constitution. And the Westminster Constitution came along. The Constitution is what was codified, article this, article that, and so on. But along with the codification, there were conventions. These were not codified, but they were time-honored principles by which parliamentarians and those within the constitutional architecture operated. And, you know, in the UK, very often, sometimes a minister gets himself into trouble and he resigns his position. I remember at one point, Rashley Jackson, as Minister of Foreign Affairs, his son was caught, if I remember well, with marijuana, and Rashley resigned his position. He had himself done nothing wrong, but it was his son. And so there were these conventions by which they operated. You know, it used to be a convention that the deputy speaker would come from the opposition and the speaker would come from the government. But as we distance ourselves from 1966 and that first constitution, there is little institutional memory about those conventions and how they're supposed to operate. And to my mind, those conventions were critical to delivering effective parliamentary democracy. And so as we distance ourselves and we drop the convention, we end up in this situation now that what we have is not delivering for us. And Ganesh said it's delivering for the wicked cabal, the cabal who are earning the riches. And that cabal, they are driven primarily by greed, and nothing will stop them. And so with I'm stretching it here. I'm not really stretching. I'm taking it to where you're taking it to its logical conclusion. There is so much money now, and especially with our newfound oil wealth, that folks don't have time with decency and conventions and so on. They have no time with oversight and scrutiny. It's about, hey, we gotta make no money, as the Guyanese man or woman on the road would say, money got to make. So this is what is driving a lot of what we see in the public domain. And it's not, you know, the issue of the cabal, as Ganesh referred to. You know, in Trinidad right now, a whole big discussion going on about the 1%. Those who are wealthy, and the argument is whether it applies to the Syrians or just as a class of the rich class and so on. But here in Guyana, and politicians are involved as well as business people are involved. They have no time for the spirit of the law. They don't even have time, Professor, for the letter of the law, much as the spirit of the law. And so it is that greed, that thirst to, and with it must come a desire to dismantle. Let's follow where it goes. Any mechanism to scrutinize or or oversight of public governance in this country, it is logical that those who are driving the process want to minimize or remove that scrutiny and that oversight. So we should not be surprised at where we are. And Ganesh sits on the Constitutional Reform Commission, and I'm happy that he has these ideas that he will bring. But I don't believe that there is any. I hate to be a Debbie Downer and throw a wet blanket, but I don't believe that there is any appetite, because the PPP came in talking about constitutional reform, and a commission was set up, but I don't even think the commission had a meeting or two or anything of substance. And now the PPP said, listen, the commission must now, they got passed a law so that the commission will reflect the current, proportions of the of Parliament, with wind and so on. But they have brought bills. If constitutional reform is important, you would think that there would at least be a bill tabled in the National Assembly to effect that change. But there is no desire, Professor, for us to have meaningful constitutional reform. So we haven't seen that bill as yet. And, I have to juxtapose this drive by the rich. I want to share something with you. My fellow MP Psycho and I, we've been visiting people who have been impacted negatively, whether they get murdered and knocked down on the road and so on. We are on the Because We Care tour. So we went back to the family of little Soraya, the girl who was killed in the explosion by the Venezuelan terrorists at the Mobile gas station on Regent Street. And that family was offered psychosocial help, counseling, and so on. They were told they were going to get counseling. Professor, no counseling. They told they can get a two-bedroom house, up to now, no house. They were told that they're going to get a little duty-free because of the car that's damaged. Up to now, no duty-free. They were told that they're going to get help because one of the children was badly burned and so on in that explosion. Terrible, Professor. And, the family had to travel to the United States at their own expense, for treatment and have to return, and no help from the government. We as a team, we offered to help to get them back to the United States. But really and truly, this was a national security lapse that is something that needs to be addressed urgently and has still not been addressed. And we remember 9/11 when people suffered. The United States government stepped in to help them. But here in Guyana, with all the riches, the cabal is only concerned about itself. And I'm mentioning this because you played the nice calypso about poverty. And so it would be remiss of me not sharing this experience of where we went down the road. So, and I want to end with Ganesh. Ganesh has spoken about the executive, members of the executive not sitting in Parliament. And that's something worthy of consideration for proper oversight. But there are so many areas. I want to touch on the, you worked in Arizona, and, but let's go to New York. New York is typically a blue state. Imagine the governor of New York running and becoming governor, but the cabinet of the governor in New York is being appointed by the Republican administration. And this is another area that I think, and we could go on with so much more that I think we need to change and we need to codify, because we have a situation where if the opposition controls Region 10, or the opposition controls Region 7, or wherever regions, the government makes sure it sends in an REO, an RHO, and a REDO who are going to oppose the administration. So we cannot imagine the governor of New York not being able to appoint, well, currently it's a female, her own cabinet. She got to work with people that Trump has appointed. And that's a recipe for gridlock. Ganesh referenced the Natural Resource Fund, fund and the law I know a little about. I remember arguing even before the first piece of legislation was passed, that legislation should have been embedded in the Constitution. And I will continue to argue and advance it on this program, that the Natural Resource Fund, the withdrawal formulas and so on, it ought to be embedded in the Constitution, because we cannot afford to have any government raiding the Natural Resource Fund and using it for political purposes. And this is what we saw. The PPP came in and they changed that the law. They removed opposition presence, except in one little small committee, the investment committee, on which I had the honor of being the first opposition representative. They removed that opposition and the presence of a number of civic organizations. They whittled all of that down, and they started off essentially saying, hey, we'll take 75% of the money. And then they got drunk on it. They jumped to 95% of the money, all right? Those things, we need to have constitutional reform so that no government is able to raid the NRF and, to use it as a political bank account in order to win elections. And it's especially dangerous because it's 2.5 billion a year right now that is flowing into the PPP that are allowed to spend. It'll be 10 billion by the time we get to 2030. So, I always believe too that certain key, and I hate to be sounding American and going down the road that Ganesh is with the executive being separated, but I must join him because I believe certain key appointments, the commissioner of police and so on, those appointments should be brought before a parliamentary committee. If the commissioner, if somebody's being nominated to be commissioner, they must come before a parliamentary committee and we must question them. There is a parliamentary committee on security. The commissioner of police should come before that committee if he is the nominee, and he should be questioned. But listen, these are the problems we got, how you intend to deal with it, and so on. So there are a number of areas of constitutional reform that I would like to see addressed. And I support Ganesh's suggestions. We'd also like to remove the immunities of reduce significantly the immunities of the president, because we have a situation where we don't have a minister of finance. The minister of finance is the president, because for anything where a minister has not been gazetted, the president is the minister. But what they have done, they have appointed a senior minister of finance within the office of the president. And the reason they did that is so that he is cloaked with the immunities of the president for any skullduggery that he executes in that position. And so all these things need to be addressed. And we can see, I can end on this note, from making the minister, Ashley Singh was senior minister of finance, standing on his own, not under the cloak of the president, in the period between 2011 and 2015. But because of scrutiny that he was placed under, he came back. And I am pretty sure he demanded that he will not. He only came back. I am pretty sure he only came back with the undertaking that he would not stand outside, that he wanted a cloak over him. And this is why from 2020 to 2025, and now from 2025 until whenever, he has gone under the president's curtail, the way I've said, so that he will be cloaked with that immunity. So, and if you take his actions and you take the adjustments to the quorum and not turning up for the PhD. And you take the Economic Service Committee, it is all of this is the actions of an executive that is determined to avoid oversight, that is determined that he will not be accountable to the people of Guyana, that is determined to make things opaque and to avoid transparency. And this is what we are fighting in Guyana. And this is what you and Ganesh and I and the rest of our colleagues on the APNU team will continue to expose and to highlight and to fight.
Dr. Terrence Campbell, the parliamentary lead of APNU.
Dr. Hines,
Yes,
if I may, I don't
yes.
want what Terrence said something that I believe is worth repeating, particularly for your viewership, not to take away from the importance of this dialogue and having regards to the fact that you don't normally have a close off time, but it is something that is worth repeating for the sake of your viewers. And that is, he and Psycho Andrews today visited the family of that young girl that lost her life in that bombing at, I think it was King Street at the gas station. And at the time when that happened, the government displayed with optics again their level of concern, or one would think their level of concern. I do remember hearing the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security through Minister Vindhya Prasad promising psychosocial therapy for the family, promising all the things that are essential to at least attempt to put back this family and bring them back to some degree of normalcy. I do remember when the promise was made to say that they are going to assist to take the family and whoever else has to go abroad for medical treatment and the likes. And I think I do recall also that indeed a duty-free concession was promised so that they can replace the damaged vehicle. And several promises were put into a package that was beating in the public space to show government concern. And here is it that Dr. Campbell and Saiku went back to that family to inquire, to check up, to see what has happened. And lo and behold, the family was not given the duty-free concession to get the vehicle that they so desire. And if I am wrong, Dr. Campbell can correct me because he was on the ground. They were not assisted to go out of the country to get the medical attention they deserve. They were not given the psychosocial therapy that they were entitled to also. From all of this created from this national incident that was not brought on to these people by any Guyanese or people within their own family. It's just that they happen to have been at that place and that incident happened. Now, I say that to say that it comes back to the point I was making earlier about optic politics and distraction politics. That is not something that is isolated to this family, and that is what your viewers must understand. Because Harish Singh's family was promised investigation and justice on television, and they're still awaiting that. The Henry boys, their family was promised justice also in the sense of representation and the likes. How many times have the government gone back to these families to check up on how they're doing? And it's not isolated to the Henry boys, that brutal and horrific murder that we know of, or Harish Singh. Quindon Bacchus has families too. Or in Boston has family. Keon Fudgeny has family. Ronaldo Peters They have family. They all have family. Is the government, the Ministry of Human Service and Social Security, the Ministry of Education, these social services ministries. Are they inquiring how these people are coping, how they're dealing with these situations? Look at Adriana Young, the family. So, in the heat of the moment, you find this pretentious cabal demonstrating to the public a sense of care. But you measure that care with the follow-up mechanisms. And the People's Progressive Party do not have any follow-up mechanism to address these burning problems that our society face. Instead, it is a spur of the moment, optics kind of politics for their own benefit, with the expectation that Guyanese will forget. But our country is hurting. Several of our families across the length and breadth, mothers and fathers, are awaiting justice because of the untimely death of their loved ones. Altaf King from Region 6, Little Africa, and so many others. But you don't hear the government doing any follow-up.
No
But I
follow-up.
wanted to mention that, Dr.
Yes,
Hine.
yes, yes,
Sorry
yes.
if I've distracted from the
No, 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 no. Some
you were
things are
having
worth
earlier.
repeating. Let me say this. I part of what I do when I'm in the few sittings in Parliament is I try to observe what's happening on the other side. And I have to go on record as saying that I have developed a respect for the Minister of Social Services. She's one of the few, if not the only, PPP minister, member of parliament that doesn't heckle. And where I'm going with this is someone who I think brings a certain kind of morality to the table, but it's operating within an immoral framework. And it's like putting good food on bad stomach. You know, that's what people say. And that thing has been animating my thought. Here you all are exposing something that I think in our hearts of heart, Dr. Prasad, as an individual, as a representative of the Hindu faith, would follow through on. I sincerely believe this. But within the political framework in which she's operating, she's not allowed, or humanity is stifled. And so therefore, one comes into the country and says, but what is the minister doing? The minister, I think, is morally upright, but she's operating in a framework that is not morally upright. And I just want to say that. I want to say also that I join with the two of you in supporting robust constitutional reform. In addition to the things that you all have mentioned, I want to put on the table the end of the winner-take-all system. I think going forward, any constitutional reform has to be situated within that framework of the end of the winner-take-all system. Because if you end the winner-take-all system, you end winner-take in Parliament, you end winner-take in the executive, you end winner-take in parliamentary committees, etc., etc., etc. I particularly like Terrence's thing that certain appointments must go before the Parliament. Your thing of the more separation of powers is something that I think is essential as we move forward. Let me shift gears and take you all to what I think 99.99% of this audience been waiting for. The APNU at the last election was beaten badly. It's now a third party. There are lots of conversation about what went wrong. What are the reasons? And as it must, when something of that magnitude happens, it animates the citizenry. And as you would have heard in my introduction, that I point to what has worked for the PNC as the major party in the coalitions, what has worked from 64. And that is coalitions have worked for the PNC. And I think sometimes people are oblivious to that when they're giving advice to the PNC what it needs to do, what it needs to do. There's some people who say the PNC is dying. Some people say the PNC is dead. All kinds of things you're hearing, as you must. Has the PNC, and I'm talking about PNC here, so I'm taking myself out. Has the PNC done any forensic analysis of what happened at the last election? I start with you, Ganesh.
Thank you, thank you. I don't know why you're starting with me. If it's because of me being in the PNC
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
long.
You senior to Terrence in
No,
the
but I have
PNC.
great respect. I have great respect nonetheless for yourself and Dr. Campbell. You know, one of the advantages of having new thinking from senior individuals is that you get to see a different perspective. And for the small amount of time, which I believe will lengthen as days go by, that I have been sitting next to you in the National Assembly, I have learned a lot. I want to tell you that I've observed you a lot. Your parliamentary presentation was one that I greatly admired. And in fact, when you were delivering it, it really grabbed my attention in totality. Dr. Campbell also, I have tremendous regards and respect for the different perspective that he brings to the table from time to time, and he oftentimes make me see things from a different lens because I've been so immersed in the ice in the I was so I'm so constrained, I would say, in the political party kind of politics, that sometimes it's good when you get that outside perspective, which I think Dr. Campbell brings and brings so well to the table. So even though you are removing yourself from the prospects of where the PNCR is currently, and rightly so, because you belong to another political party that is in our APNU, and you have your own constituency and your own political dynamics and objects relating to the WPA, and we all know the PNC is separate and apart. I want to say first of all that. You said something at the start of your program, and you would not believe me. I do normally take little jottings. It's not. It is for me to understand. So your viewership may not understand, but I do write down when I find something interesting that is being said. And you said that when your opponent beats you, it is to their benefits. It is to their benefit. And you said that when the PPP beats you publicly, you know that you're getting under the skin. And it is because they find what you say and what you do to be problematic to them. And they got to come back in one way or another to really pull back the crowd to their end, because you touch the skin, you get right underneath the skin, right? That's how I interpreted what you were saying, Dr. Hines. And before I answer your question, I'm saying that to say to you that there is a fundamental difference. There's a fundamental difference between the PPP supporters and the PNC supporters. And that fundamental difference is, and perhaps it might be culturally, the history of it might be culturally oriented. I have not seen, even when the PPP was in opposition, I have not seen the PPP support base attack their own, fight down their own, try to devour their own in the public space. Maybe they do it behind closed doors. I don't know. I'm not a part of their configuration, never been and never have any intention of being there. But when you look at how they operate in the public space and you compare that to how the PNC base and supporters operate in the public space, it gives you that conclusion that clearly there's a difference in how we operate. And our manner of attacking our own in the public space, thinking that that will address the problem, really and truly creates the problem and makes it more difficult to deal with. And you talk about cementing your base before you look for crossover, and rightly so. But you have sometimes people who, for strange reasons, find comfort coming onto this internet thinking that they're doing justice to a political structure that has been in existence since 1957. And they lambaste, they criticize, they devour, not taking into account that there are mechanisms within the established structure to do exactly what they want to do. All they got to do is join the party. All they got to do is register for a membership card and participate in the structure that has been in existence since 1957. And in that structure, an order and structure is very important in politics, as you would know, having taught politics for 30-odd years. In that structure, you get the opportunity to speak at your group level. You get the opportunity to speak at your regional level. You get the opportunity to speak at the central exec, at the general council, and at the Congress. And at the Congress, you get the opportunity to participate in electing your leaders. But if you ain't got a membership card and you're a supporter and you lean towards trying to advance your case in the public space, all you are doing is enhancing the People's Progressive Party agenda. All you are doing is solidifying the PPP's base. All you are doing is throwing people towards the PPP and attempting to destroy what you claim to love. To come to your question now, yes, we did take a look at what went wrong in 2025 elections. Whether we took a deep look is another story. Whether we went as deep as one may want us to go, that's another story. But we did take a look at what happened in the 2025 elections. And we recognize, as you rightly pointed out, that Win did not take any votes from the PPP. What Win did was really capitalize on those that were disgruntled by what happened between the PNC and the AFC. Because rightly so, people wanted coalition politics. There are people who were yearning for coalition to work. But I will say to you, as one of the persons who sat in the negotiations between the APNU and the AFC, that it is not the fault of the APNU that caused the coalition to fall apart. In fact, we were fighting for it more than ever. Perhaps one side believed they could have taken advantage over the desperation that was being demonstrated by the APNU for coalition politics. And that may have caused it to fall apart. And that is one reason why we unfortunately find ourselves where we are currently, and our supporters thought that win was perhaps where their anger should lead them. I have no doubt they will return. As you rightly said, third parties don't have bases, and I agree with you. People get angry, they sometimes do good things, sometimes they do clumsy things. In this instance, I think it was clumsy, and I think they will return. Another reason that has caused us to be where we are, in my humble view, is the constant infighting that was happening with several of the people who were given prominence when we were in government. And then that led to them moving on to being the representatives and image. And today, look at what they have done. These were not people who were very closely affiliated to us when we were in opposition before 2015. And don't get me wrong, there are certain people who left who were with us too when we were in opposition. Tandai McAllister is an example. I think deep in Tandai's heart, she still values the PNCR. I think Tandai still loves the PNCR and is likely to return to the PNCR. It's just a matter of time. I don't believe James Bond is even comfortable where he is. He may have gone there because it provides the financial opportunity for him to gain. And he finds comfort there, but I think he's going to come back home. But when you look at other people, when you examine other people who have gained prominence in the PNCR and then shifted to the PPP when they came back into government, they created this kind of issue where we had people challenging people in our own political party. And that also caused our supporters not to be comfortable. And it comes back to the earlier point I was making about us washing our dirty linen then in the public space. We have caused people to lose that level of confidence as opposed to utilizing our structure that we have and fight our battles internally. And of course, finance played a role too in having us where we are. Finance
Yes.
perhaps was the greatest of the three factors that I have outlined. And several promises were made, monies were shared out. I don't think people got, most of them didn't get what was promised to them. And that may cause us to see a different results in 2030. But those are three simple factors. I'm sure Dr. Campbell may have some more that he wished to adumbrate. But those are three critical factors, I believe, that are responsible for where we are. And as a political party, it requires us to do that introspection. It requires us to dive a little deeper, and we have to fix the problem where it exists. But fixing it does not require the leader of the party alone or the general secretary or the 15 elected executive members. It requires a change in how all of us who love the party, who believe in the party, and who believe that this is the party to unseat the PPP, to also change the way we operate in the public space.
Terrence, let me come to you and thank you, Ganesh, for advancing those reasons in a real candid way. And I come to you, Terrence, and I have to give credit where credit is deserved. Immediately after the election, like a mad man in the positive sense, you began to ask the question, what went wrong? What caused this? And I think you advanced what is you call a 5 point. I can't remember whether it was 5 or 6. But there's something that's catch your eye. And I remember when you advanced those 5 things, it caught my eye because you were not looking at a single reason. You were looking at colliding reasons. Ganesh advanced 3 reasons there. And if you take each of them by themselves, it tells you very little. If you take them together, it tells you a lot. And I think that's what I found intriguing about your approach. What went wrong for us in a larger intertwining sense? What went wrong?
So let me start with some comments. The last comment from Ganesh, where he said that change is required, not at the leader, not at the leader, exclusively at the leader, exclusively at the general secretary or the CEC, but a change in terms of the entire approach of the party. And I want to put that down with the harsh reality that you have pointed out. And the harsh reality is that the PPP has only ever, and I've been preaching this, not now, I've been preaching this before 2011, that the PPP, well, before 2011, I was preaching that this is the way to go. 2011 and 2015 provided empirical evidence that the PPP will only be removed via a grand coalition. And I want to use the word grand. I want to put it in there, or broad, because when you put the PNC with the united force, what you are doing is bringing together almost the entirety of the opposition. They were from fringe parties around, but of no significance. You are bringing them together, the mass of opposition forces. And you refer to 2011. It's interesting that you refer, because people don't normally refer to 2011, but the 2011 was the first stage of dethroning the PPP by driving them into a position of a minority government. And that was done not because the forces came together, but it was done, well, by the forces coming together in parliament, not necessarily in the election, because the AFC ran separately from the APNU, but together in parliament, there was some degree of cooperation, and then they ousted the PPP, and followed up by a Herdman-Stan Accord, which then threw the PPP out from government in 2015. We cannot, I get frustrated politically when I have to preach about the necessity of a broad and grand coalition. The PPP will have, and I mentioned it earlier, $10 billion. $10 billion of oil revenues to spend. They only got 2.5 billion now, Professor, every year, roughly. Imagine when they get 10 by 2030. I expect that they will probably give out a $2 million cash grant to every citizen in 2030 to try to take that election home. How will you fight? Or a $1 billion cash grant? How will you fight this PPP except if all the forces come together to oust them? And it's important that we oust them because the demographics of Guyana is changing. The PPP does not have a migration policy. We're hearing about people coming into the country and getting ID cards and getting citizenship and so on. So there are a number of external factors, coming from business and even politics. We do a SWOT and we look to see what the opportunities and the threats are. And there are some serious threats. And so the only answer, and I want to say it, I'll say it now and before I finish, I'm just getting started, that the only answer to removing the PPP in 2030, it needs to get into every thick skull that there is out there, is a grand coalition. Now, politics has changed. And politics is going to be fought largely on social media, which is what we are doing here. largely on social media, because social media is beautiful for the politician who has control of it, or who has the advantage in it, because you can say a word and you get it out to thousands of people. You don't need the newspapers, no. In fact, when you write a letter to the newspaper, Professor, it's seen by less people than when you make a post. So we have got to, as a party and as an opposition, to compete. The war is going. The ground game is not eliminated at all. We still got to go. We still have to meet with people, as we try to do almost every single day. You have to have the ground game. You have to get the groups that Ganesh is talking about, people joining the party and the groups. But we also have to have the social media game going. You mentioned what I call the 5 dimensions of failure. And I want to clarify that the 5 dimensions of failure was about the APNU in the election and not necessarily the PNC in the election. But what the people said to me and to others as we went out, and I like to say that for those, if anybody is interested in research and they know about qualitative research, I think these teams were developed to the point of saturation until I could hear them no more. And they felt that they wanted more representation, they wanted more support, they wanted more education, engagement, they wanted more unity. The unity, and by that unity, it is coalition. Because I will tell you that and I'll never forget, they say this all the way, but I'll never forget, sitting down with some guys, cutting up the weed on Sideline Dam, and they say, but y'all know y'all gotta get coalition for win. So the knowledge that a coalition is necessary to win doesn't only exist in the exalted classroom of Politics 101. It is there on the road, on the Sideline Dam, with the fellas cutting up the weed that they're going to sell. They know it. The other concern broadly that they had concerns with leadership, and they also felt that they were let down by the Granger administration. Especially the youths, they felt that they had thrown out and I'm using the language here, Professor, they throw out the belly for victory in 2015. But they felt they did not see the benefits of throwing out their belly. So those dimensions of failure give us a path. They present to us a path forward and to victory. And coalition is a big one of them. We must have the unity that the people felt they didn't see. And we must support them and represent them and engage with them. I think as long as those things are done by the APNU as a construct, and the PNC is a large part of the APNU, I think as long as those things are done, right, we will see a victory in 2030. We must remember, and Ganesh pointed out that some people went to win, and very often the idea and the thought is that maybe win could represent them better. And you would recall that I pointed out that the constitutional architecture really does not even allow win to represent them better than we could. But we must open our minds to the fundamental thing that unless there is a broad coalition, and I want to go back a little bit to the 1940 to 1945 period, and there are others, but that one sticks out in my mind. By no means do I believe that Churchill liked Stalin. I do not believe for any moment that Churchill liked Stalin. But in fact, and you know this, Professor, the Americans did not want to get into that war.
That's right. Or that Churchill liked Attlee. Because remember, in England, they set up a war government of the conservatives and the thing, right? So Attlee and Churchill were at each throat. And so, yes, but I wanted to throw in that it was more than just the British and the West with Stalin, but it was also
Exactly.
England where they set up a war government.
Exactly. So, but, these guys came together. They came together. Roosevelt, acted. Churchill agreed to sit down with Stalin in Yalta, and they formed a coalition that would then defeat the Germans and the Japanese. And so I am saying, and I cannot say it more, I'm willing to lose political capital by saying it, that a grand coalition will be necessary to and remove the PPP. We must, because, Professor, I suffer from the PPP, but not in ways that cause me to lose sleep at night. The PPP can't stop me eating cook-up tomorrow, and I love cook-up. And I don't think it can stop Ganesh eating cook-up if he like cook-up or curry chicken or chicken curry or whatever he wants, or duck curry, or you with whatever you want to eat tomorrow. But there are people out there who are suffering. And, I want to come. Yesterday, we visited the family of a policeman who was shot by a businessman at Reed and Hoop, named Richard Hayes.
Mm-hmm.
And we also visit the family of Fanel Brewster, who was shot by bandits as she ran to the assistance of her brother. Mm-hmm. And today we visited a family, and it was so amazing to hear this story. This young lady, Professor, I have driven to Madhya. Apparently, she used to get on her motorcycle and drive right from Georgetown to Madhya to sell. I was there in shock. I tell them they're telling me the truth. I say, y'all can't be telling me the truth. A woman leaving Georgetown to ride her motorcycle to Madhya, not to Linden, not to Mabura, but to Madhya to sell. And she's riding, coming along the Linden Highway, and she gets crushed by a truck. And the common thing here, Professor, is that they are not seeing the justice. Fanel Brewster and Richard Hayes' family say they're only going to court, and case put down for another date. Case put down for another date. Case put down for another date. The young lady today who passed away, her family, people tell me they must take $1 million because sometimes you don't even get that much. That's the value that has been placed on human life in this country. And we remember Quinlan Bacchus when the court awarded, I think, $20 million, that the AG didn't feel that his life was valued, so he was going to appeal. And I must remember young Scipio the other day who bought a motorcycle and just buying him, he's working as a mason, he just buy a motorcycle. And within 4 months of buying this motorcycle, they arrest him and lock him up for 3 days, saying that he was involved in a robbery, only to find out he was mistaken identity. Then they saw him sitting on his motorcycle on the road, just 100 yards from his house. They say, you thief the motorcycle. And they tased him, refused him to go home 100 yards just to bring his documents, only to find out that he really owned him. And within days of tasing him, they shot him. We have Altaf King, a young man, 16 years old, riding his motorcycle, chased by the police. Dude, there are people there is real suffering out there, Professor. Mm-hmm. Those people, I have gone to say, we will remove the PPP in 20. I said, no, we want here 20. We want them removed before. And remove them, we must. And we know, coming back to what you said, and what I am endorsing 1,000%, only a coalition will remove the PPP in 2030. And so, as politicians, or I like to avoid that term, for me, and the two of y'all are called politicians, but for me, I'll say as a man involved in politics, we must open our minds and embrace the changes that are necessary to remove the PPP, not for me, you, and Ganesh, but for the people of Guyana who are suffering out there.
Dr. Terrence Campbell here tonight, just getting started. Terrence, let me stay with you. Ganesh, hold for a minute. Let me stay with you, Terrence, because I think you're onto something. You know, I was telling a family member today who came by to see me that I am in the unfortunate position that what I do in the community that I live and beyond, what you do more than me, what Ganesh does, we can't publicize it. The kind of social welfare that we do, we can't publicize it because we are from the community and we are sensitive to a certain pride in the community. That if you help them, you don't go and put it on camera. But that I am certain that we do more social welfare work in our community. And I'm talking about APNU. And myself in my community in Buxton, my friends, sometimes they come to my rescue. They say, Dr. Hines, here is a donation to go to your social welfare program because they're with me. And the poverty in my village and other village is excruciating. And resources have to be put aside to deal with that. And I know you, I say you do it more than me. Mohammed doesn't belong to the community. And there's what you call the gratefulness factor. So the community is grateful for what he does, and they don't mind him publicizing it. But you and I can't publicize it in the same way because of the ethos of the community and the anti taking handouts kind of thing. But we do that work in the APNU. We take care of our community's needs in ways that we can't publicize. We can do it in a general way, but not in a specific way because we are sensitive to the feelings of people about that. And so I wanted to make that point and to get your comments and Ganesh's comments on that thing, because people often say, well, look what the other man doing, look what this body doing, what the APNU doing. A close friend of mine said, David, you know Mohammed is giving you your parliamentary salary? The close friend, you know. I said, well, why just do the same? You know, so I sent her the news clip where I said my parliamentary salary, I don't touch. It goes for community services and so on. She said, oh God, I didn't know that. Right? How do we navigate the ethos of not shaming people with what we do? And in this age of social media that you talk about, where other people do, and they publicize it without getting the tag of shaming. I don't know if I'm making sense with the question, but you first and then Ganesh.
So I wanna start with something that you mentioned. You mentioned excruciating poverty, I think.
Yes.
I have seen that throughout the country. I moved to Georgetown from the Esquivel Coast in 1972. So I've been living in Georgetown for 54 years. And I have run the gamut of Georgetown as a young man and so on, that I thought I knew every part of Georgetown. And I don't know if you recall, when we went to the big yard on Broad Street, and there was that mound. When I walk in there, I never thought that situation existed in Guyana or even Georgetown, the capital city. And I've come to understand that they are, not just understand, I've come to see other communities of poverty like those across the country. And we are, I believe, all three of us are in politics because, especially at this time, because we know that that need not be the case with the resources that are now available to this country.
Mhm.
But I want to answer your question from a slightly different perspective. And I want to say that I believe that in my life I've given away more money than Muhammad. And I don't say this lightly.
I know.
But when I left Essequibo and came to Georgetown, my father was Catholic. We used to go to church steady. And when he came to town, we didn't go to church. Until 1970, we never started going to church until about 2000. I have never been, I don't know why. I called him at the end and said, you know what, I'll go. I said, well, let's go on 6 o'clock mass. And so I joined him, right? I never asked him why it was that, and I have some ideas of why he broke away from the church during that period. I think he felt alienated as Catholics from what he saw in Georgetown. But the real reason I'm bringing this up, on the very first day that I went back to church, Father John Prasad, who is now Bishop John Prasad of Mandeville, said, listen, when you do good, you don't have to let people know because God sees it.
Mhm, mhm.
I'm preaching here now.
Yes.
So this Judeo-Christian value is about doing good, right? And blessings will flow to you. You don't have to shout about it. God sees it, and God will bless you for what you do. And so over the years, and I've had big arguments with public relations people who says, you need to let people know what you're doing. For about 15 years, I fed the children at Ketley Primary because there was a businessman who had been charged for having anal sex with the young boys. And a foreign NGO came in and said, well, we got to feed these young boys so they won't be vulnerable to people like this. But that NGO lasted 1 year and I picked up that feeding program and I have evidence of it for 15 years, quietly, never saying a word. I cannot tell you the millions I spent.
Mhm.
And there are other institutions, like the government is saying they're bringing the first school for autism in this country. There was a private school named Step by Step, and I was involved in supporting Step by Step for years. And I could go on and on. I honestly believe I give away more money than Muhammad, but I never said anything about it because of the Judeo-Christian values
Mhm.
that guide my life. But I'm going to say something here to you now, Professor. That ain't going to win no election. That will not win an election. And so, with absolutely no guilt in me, Terrence Campbell in church can stay in church, but Terrence Campbell in politics we have, in this age of social media, we have no choice but to let people, remember where I went. I said the people want to be supported, they want to be represented, and they want to be engaged. And we have to let social media know when we're supporting them. Otherwise, we can't win the election. Otherwise, the other guys are looking good, and we looking thin, as the guys on the street would say. You're looking thin there, buddy. We can't look thin no more. So we have to have a mindset change. I can agree with what you're saying, and I attribute it to my Judeo values, right? But I'm saying that got to go out the window. That has to go out the window. When we support people, the politics, and we got to, Ganesh at the start said the optics of politics that the PPP play. We got to play the same optics of politics. And when we are supporting people, we got to let people know we support it. Look, we are capable of supporting you. And if we could support you and we out of government, imagine the support we're going to give to you when we get into government. Because we understand now that you are the ones we're looking for to get us into government, and we're going to deliver for you once we get in there. We are going to eliminate the excruciating poverty. But look, with little resources, we're already doing something for you now. And when we get into power, we're gonna do more. That politics of being shy about our support, it got to go.
Dr. Terrence Campbell here tonight to the left of David Hines on this issue of thing. And my friend in Buxton, Turkey, a PNC stalwart, he talked about it. Great party. Turkey would agree with you. He quarrels with me all the time because he said, you're doing so much in this community and nobody knows. And so on. He would welcome this comment. To the left of David Hines on this issue, Dr. Terrence Campbell. I still grapple with it. Before I bring in Ganesh Mahaipaul, because I'm interested in Ganesh's take on this, because he comes from a different cultural perspective. And I would like to hear his take on this issue of morality, the Judeo-Christian morality, the African morality, and I would like to hear him. But before I go to Ganesh, on the 6th of July, that's his next week, Monday, Camps TV, led by Kidaki Amsterdam, WPA executive member, is calling a protest against the bill that is being brought to Parliament on the ex-president's benefits. It will take place in Buxton at the Church of God Road at 10 o'clock on Caricom Day. And we're inviting everyone to come. In some parts of the media, you may see it as a WPA protest, and that is understandable. But, you know, part of the WPA constitution is that we give our members latitude to engage in activities outside of the party, and then the party supports it. So under the aegis of the CAMS TV, Kedaki is organizing that protest on Monday at 10 o'clock in Buxton, and we're inviting people of all political stripes to come out. The lead issue on the protest is the ex-president's benefits bill. So make sure you come out to that protest. Ganesh, this question of morality and political necessity when it comes to helping people's families and communities in this era, in this age of excruciating poverty.
You know, Dr. Hines, I'm twirling in my head because I have to say some things that, to answer this question, of course, I have to say some things that one may view as good and one may view as bad. But let me start off first by saying that Dr. Campbell only spoke about a couple of things that he has done over the years, and he knows that I know of lots more than that. But I'm not even sure if I am supposed to be saying what are those others. But indeed, Dr. Campbell has been a philanthropist, basically, for since I have known him, and I have known him since about 2010, 2009, somewhere thereabout, and he has always been involved in giving. Now, I have spent my entire life in public service. I've never had the opportunity to be involved in any form of business to earn outside of where I earn. So I don't possess the financial ability and authority to take from my pocket and give the way Dr. Campbell can, or you, Dr. Hines, or many other people who do the good work of giving. I have approached many business entities, including Terrence when he was very popular in the business fraternity, for assistance to assist people, because somehow in the minds of our people, they have to come to the politicians for assistance. And there are several people who I assisted, but it was through communication with people like Terrence and other business people to make things happen for ordinary people who have suffered. And I will go as far as to say to you, Dr. Hines, that there was a time when Azruddin Mohammed was approached by me from the party's perspective and with instructions from the party, then Amna Ali it was, to reach out for assistance to do certain things for people, and he did contribute towards making things possible. I reached out to Terrence Campbell when he was there with churches also, and got several assistance from him too for various functions to assist various assistance for people across the country, raise funds for several activities that we've had as a party. And parties survive through contribution. Let's make no mistake about that. The PPP is surviving through public thievery. We can see that. And they have so much at their disposal that they engage in public thievery for their survival right now. The opposition, the APNU, we survive based on contribution and donations from majority of the business community that are friendly to the cause. Of course, we can't mention the name. We cannot say is who, because you know how the Guyana context is, right? But and I have been in this game since, and maybe game, I shouldn't say game, but I've been around since about 2008 to now, and have always been in communication to get for people. But we have never shared it openly and publicly because we wanted to respect the people, thinking that showing their story out in the public, their faces, their surrounding and so on, may be just viewed as us wanting cheap political points, as opposed to us doing it with a genuine cause.
Ganesh Mahaipaul here tonight, and we have gone into Sherrod's time, past Sherrod time, gone into Mark Benshop time, and our audience has stayed with us. Some of them coming from Sherrod now, and so on and so forth. Let's do some rapid responses here, because we have to get in some of these issues. Norton must go. Let me put a disclaimer there. Anytime anybody call a black man ugly and is not worthy of certain thing, David Hines not with you in that corner at all. And the other man named we used to call it For You. And he used to tell his wife, for you I die. Right? If you calling a black man ugly and you saying he's not electable or some code word that he's not worthy because you drink certain way and so on, David Hines not with you. All right? So let me put that disclaimer there as we discuss Aubrey Norton. Right? I once you go down that road, I'm not discussing political faults anymore because you've gone beyond political ideology and faults. And on a normal day, I would not ask this question. But I noticed that even after the election is finished, some of those forces that Ganesh mentioned continue. And when you talk to our people on the ground, you have to say they have done a wonderful job. Because some good people, some people who voted for Aubrey and the APNU say, man, that time, but Aubrey got to go. And so I think it's an important issue that we deal with it in public. And so I know you all wish I didn't ask that question. And I wish that I didn't have to ask that question. But I'm saying I would not be doing justice, even to our supporters. If it were PPP supporters alone, if it were those who go there and they alone, I would not ask this question tonight. But they've done such a clinical job that they have our own people repeating that mantra. So here's an opportunity for you all to put this thing in perspective. Aubrey Norton must go. Terrence Campbell, you first, and then
I want to go first,
all right,
respectfully.
go right ahead. Go right ahead.
I want to go first,
ID4.
respectfully.
Right.
And I will be very short.
Yes.
Very short and to the point. And my simple answer to that position that Aubrey has to go is Barnum was there and he went his merry way. Desmond Hoyt was there and he went his merry way. Robert Corbin was there and he went his merry way. Granger was there and he went his merry way. And Aubrey is there, and at the time will come when he will have to go his merry way also. That's my short and concise answer. I leave the rest over to Dr. Terrence now.
Go ahead, Doc.
So I'm going to start a little different. I'm going to endorse what Ganesh has said, but I think a lot of this, there's a point that I want to bring out. I'm going to use this opportunity to bring out, and it's tangentially related to the question. That even within the PNC, as these people argue about leadership and as ideas are advanced about how we get a presidential candidate in the next election, I think people forget where you started from and I endorsed. And it is that a grand coalition is necessary to put the PPP out. And we must open our minds to that grand coalition and how it may come about. And so it does not, I am saying at this point, desperate times require desperate measures. And so before we get wrapped up, I'm going to answer the question, before we get wrapped up in who is the leader of the PNC or who is the presidential candidate of the PNC, it may very well be that the best man to lead us into the next election is David Hines. And the critical thing about it, the question that must be answered when we talk about leadership is who is best suited to lead a grand coalition into the next election. So sometimes I think we get caught up on this PNC question as if the PNC is the beginning and end all. It will not be. And I am a member of the PNC. I'm firmly in the PNC, both feet planted in the PNC. And so what I say is not to diminish the PNC, but I'd like people to start understanding that when we talk about a grand coalition, it may be that, we got to take David Hines from the WP or Kidaki from the WP, to lead the coalition going forward. So I want to put that reality check to all the people who are getting caught up with this whole thing about PNC leadership and presidential candidate. And I want to endorse what Ganesh is saying. The leader has said that he will not be in he will not be the presidential candidate. I take him at his word that he will not be the presidential candidate in the next election. He said he'll be 73. And like Ganesh said, every leader has come and gone. Institutions, let me give you an example. I started Church's Chicken from scratch, David, from scratch. I know from the first contract, I know almost every single location they got, how it built, where I go through to build it. I don't think they got a new location that built. I've been out July 30th, it's going to be 2 years. But they're still around, and they still seem to be doing well. And the man who started and know its DNA and every single thing has gone. I have no say in the place. And so we must think about these institutions in that way. There's nobody who is indispensable. And so the leader, Aubrey Norton, is there. And as Ganesh said, as all other leaders have come and gone. so he too will come and go. The question, it is a question of timing, and at what, how. I think the question to be answered is when is the appropriate time? Because I believe that we had, here's a missing point, and I'm not afraid to go a little deep into this. The results say, an emphasis on the results say, 77,000 people voted for the APNU. The results say that 109,000 people voted for Win. That's 186,000. Close to 220,000 people voted for the APNU AFC in 2020. The population has grown. And so our natural supporters should have been maybe around at 250, 260. So then my question to you is what happened with the other 60, 70,000 people? They're out there and they are naturally APNU supporters, but for the reasons, the 5 dimensions, one or several of them, they did not come out to vote. And so the potency remains for the APNU. And I believe that a new construct is required to motivate them and galvanize them to come out in the next election. And so the question that must be answered is at how soon must that new construct appear to get them motivated and galvanized so that we win the next election.
Dr. Terrence Campbell, let me say something before we go off this point. I have known Aubrey Norton since in the early 1980s. We met at the University of Guyana. We were enrolled there at the same time, different parties. In fact, parties that were at each other's throat. But we became quote unquote friends. I mean, we weren't at each other's throat because we discovered that ideologically we subscribed to the same thing. Our difference was in temperament, a partisan, and so forth. And over the years, we have maintained that contact. And I'm going to say this. Part of the beat up on Aubrey Norton, and Aubrey gets on your political nerves. He gets on my political nerves, right? Well, who doesn't? Burnham got on my political nerves. That's why I join and think, But I'll say this. Part of the beat up on Aubrey Norton is that he became the first activist who became leader of the party, that he became leader of the party as an activist, and he continued as an activist. There were activists who became leader of the party and stopped being activists. Aubrey Norton became leader as an activist and continued as an activist. The problem with people like Aubrey, and I suppose myself, is that you radicalize people in a certain way. And they expect that radicalism must apply to everything and every decision and every dispensation. And so therefore, Aubrey the activist really get people vexed when he became leader and he had to balance activism with leadership. And that became part of a problem. And then, of course, the class thing and color thing and so on, which is very much part of a discussion for another day. But I want to say, as an observer, Norton has played his role within the capacity and the scope that a political party like the PNC gave him. If Norton were the leader of the WPA, or you would be saying something different, right? Okay? But Norton is leading an electoral political party which imposes limitations for good or for worse on the leader. And to take him outside of the political party and be beating him, I think is the unkindest cut. And so when you all hear me animated on this issue is not a love for Norton, although I love the brother, all right? But it is a political culture that is unkind to certain people. And I will continue to say that because I could say it. Not everybody could say it. And I always say that. There's some things some of us could say, and I could say it. Or you beat up on him because he black like me, and poverty is a legacy, to quote a poet, right? And it's not, I don't care about PPP beating up on him. As Ganesh said, his own party members, his own family, political family, that beat up on him. And in a certain sense, they have succeeded in going beyond where they think that they should have been. That is, you start something and it gets out of hand. How you put the genie back in the bottle. And I think that, and I don't want you all to follow me and comment because I don't want to get you all in trouble. I say it because I could say it. All right? And there's one thing I meant to, you poke your finger in my eye, and I know I could poke your finger back. I could poke my finger back, and I'm doing it. I'm going to lose votes because of it, but such is political life. This development bank, talk to me.
That one is for Terrence to go on.
Terrence?
David, we are not, as an APNU team, we're not opposed to the development bank. And the development bank is not a new idea. It was we had a development bank back in 1973.
Guy Bank.
Under the Guy Bank, under the PNC. And it was an idea that was killed in 1995 by the PPP. Quite similar to the University of Free Education at the University of Guyana. We had free education under Burnham, primary to tertiary, starting in 1976, killed by the PPP, and then revived. So it's a pattern. The good things that were established by the PNC, killed by the PPP, and now they realize that these were great ideas, they're bringing them back. Some people make the argument that I want to say a little bit on the history. Some people make the argument that Guy Bank was a failure. Guy Bank had an issue of what in finance terms we call currency immunization. You borrow in foreign exchange, but all of your transactions are in local currency. And that always presents a problem if there is a devaluation. And we understand, no need to go over that whole period from 1970, the oil crisis in the 70s, mid-70s, all the way through to the economic recovery program and the change of government in 1992, devaluation, structural adjustment policies, and so on. So imagine for a moment, just for the people who are listening, that you borrow $10 US, $100 US, in today's dollars, that'll be 21,500. Let's say 215 to 1. And you are doing business in Guyana with that $21,500. You're making a 10% return. So you're making $2,150. But there's a devaluation. And the currency moves from 215 to 1 to 430 to 1. So now your debt has gone from $21,500 to $43,000. But in local, you could have serviced that debt when you were making a 10% return of $2,150. But now you can't service the debt because you're still making the $2,150. But the debt has escalated. if the interest rate was 5%, you are paying maybe that would be $1,075, right? Now, with the doubling of the value of the debt, because there's been a devaluation, now it's the same 2150 that you're making, got to service the entire debt. So you ain't got no money making. And that was the problem at Guy Bank. So they had the debt, they had received foreign funding in foreign currency, but all of their loans and everything was in Guyana dollars. They were not currency immunized. The idea in finance is that if you are selling in Guyana dollars, that's where you're earning your money, then you must borrow in Guyana dollars. You're immunized. But if you can borrow in foreign currency, if you're exporting and earning in foreign currency, because then if there's a devaluation, your debt rises, but so too does your income because you're selling in foreign currency and everything is smooth. So Guy Bank had that problem, and there was a plan advance that the government should take over the debt that Guy Bank had and to allow Guy Bank to continue, and they never followed up on that. They decided to close the institution. So now they have brought back Guy Bank. And in short, there are a number of issues. One, there is a financing gap for entrepreneurs, but $3 million. Now, I'm not opposed. I'm not going to beat up on the $3 million. It's a start, but but I will point out the shortfall, because $3 million, I said that it's for small and medium-sized enterprises. A medium-sized enterprises is determined by up to 25 people, a business employing up to 25 people. If we say they're paying $100,000 a month for 25 people, that means the monthly payroll is $2.5 million. You got to put in a little extra for the company's contribution to NIS and other benefits and so on. So we got almost to $3 million. So basically, if you lend $3 million to a medium-sized enterprise, you're basically just helping them with 1 month's salary, right? So it's not going to do much for the financing gap, but there are micro enterprises, opportunistic entrepreneurs, where the $3 million might help. But so it does not cover the financing gap for a lot of the people who need financing with the $3 million. It may be they say, let's start for $3 million and let's learn how to do this, because micro lending without interest, because the law says with or without interest or with or without collateral, that's a very specialized area. So it may be that they are testing their feet in the water to see how that goes. But the law, again, it doesn't specify that it's only for Guyanese citizens. It allows the minister to appoint the entire board of the organization. And we've seen what that has done with the Natural Resource Fund, where the president appoints 3 of the 5 directors. 1 comes from the private sector. You know, the private sector is controlled by the president in this country. And 1 comes from the National Assembly. And we know the National Assembly is controlled by the president and the executive. So essentially, the government is appointing all 5 directors. And we have seen that the board of the Natural Resource Fund is just a pass-through, a rubber stamp to just approve everything that the government wants to do. And so we can expect that the same thing will happen with the board of the Development Bank. There is no independence in terms of credit. They want to appoint a CEO. The board will appoint a CEO. They don't specify what qualifications the CEO should have. There should be, and the board itself, we have, it should be broad-based. It should have opposition representatives. And it could also have private sector representatives, but not from the the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce or the Private Sector Commission or the Central Quarantine. It could the Guyana Association of Bankers, which I think is a little more objective and balanced and risk averse, and certainly competent organization could be allowed to appoint members to the board. I don't think so. There are so many issues with this act. I'm just touching on a couple of them because, I know we're way past me into Sherrod and Benchcop and everybody's hour. So I'm just giving a couple of them that the necessity for an independent credit committee and so on. There are a number of problems with the act, and Ganesh and I and the APNU team have already started calling for the bill to be sent to a special select committee to discuss and to enhance it so that what eventually could be brought to the floor would be something that could receive unanimous approval of all the MPs that are there. There is need for development bank. It is what the PNC saw all the way back in the 70s that is being brought back. We are happy to see that the PPP is following up on a PNC idea and acknowledging the wisdom of Forbes Burnham and just bring it to a select committee and let us go through and make some adjustments and bring a bill to the floor that can receive unanimous approval of all the MPs.
Ganesh, my
David,
poor.
I just want to add that notwithstanding all that Terrence said, which I fully agree with and endorse, that in the 2025 manifesto, our party, our coalition, the APNU, we are the only party that documented in our 2025 manifesto that there is need for a Guyana Development Bank. So it is something that we fully support as a coalition. The name is exactly what we fully support. We had, of course, I should say that the devil is really in the details. And what we are seeing before us, as Terrence rightly pointed out, is what is the issue. And with or without us, the PPP have the number to pass this bill. We are extending what I would say maturity in this process by writing them officially, which we have done, requesting of them to send this bill to a special select committee. We don't want it to waste any time there. We believe we can deal with this matter in less than 2 weeks and come back to the House and pass a more robust, well hammered out Guyana Development Bank for the benefit of our people. It is not something that we are against. We just want to ensure that we put corrective measures in place to safeguard all the points that Terrence made so that it can benefit the people of our country. And we hope that the PPP sees the maturity in sending it to the Special Select Committee so that we can come out with a bill that can enjoy the support of the entire House. Mind you, we went to Special Select Committee with the Single Windows Bill. It was a bill that we had called for it to go to a Special Select Committee. The opposition had tabled 13 changes to the bill. The government had accepted 10 of those 13, reworded it to suit themselves, reshaped it in the bill. It was accepted and supported by the full House. So there is room for us to work together on issues that are necessary for the benefit of our people. The Guyana Development Bank is one such bill that we can put our hands to the table and work for the people of this country. I hope that the government sees wisdom in
One bill that was sent to a special select committee is the Sexual Offenders Register Bill. After about a week of outcry, the government said they're sending it to a special select committee. Talk to us about your position on that bill, Ganesh.
No, well, definitely it is clear that because the people took the power into their own hands and demonstrated how unfair it is to the nation for you to keep the register closed, and it ignited a people power kind of movement that it caused Irfan to buckle. None of us here should believe, and this is to your viewers, none of us here should believe that a bill just appears on an order paper. There is a procedure that bills go through before they reach on the order paper of the National Assembly and before it is shared in the public space. The Ministry of Legal Affairs, they are responsible for the drafting, but they draft based on the guidance that is provided by the respective ministries. So in this instance, we have the Ministry of Human Service and Social Security. They are the architect of this bill. They submit to the Ministry of Legal Affairs what is it that they would like to see in this bill, which they are supposed to acquire through meaningful consultation with the people. And of course, they're supposed to also table paper to cabinet where cabinet would have a robust discussion on what is to be presented as a bill. And that, when it is being coined by the Ministry of Legal Affairs, is then sent back to cabinet for them to have robust exchanges and deliberation. And after it is accepted by cabinet, then the green light is given for it to proceed to the National Assembly. So this
And what
bill, Sexual Offences Bill, was known to the entire PPP before it reached the public eyes. It was seen by them, supported by them, endorsed by them, and then it came to the public's eye. And
and when,
after that outcry by the people, then is when they realize that, you know what, we need to take this thing back to meaningful consultation. And the only step that is available to them, they had two options. One, they could have pulled it completely from the order paper, or the second one is to send it to a special select committee. So it is going to a special select committee to engage with the parliamentary opposition for a robust and more meaningful legislation that is likely to come back on the floor for meaningful, we're likely to come back on the floor with a more robust bill to have unanimous support. And the same, Dr. Hines, can happen with the Guyana Development Bank. The same can happen with the former president benefits and other amenities.
I want you to go to the former president's bill, because when we got to Parliament, the first thing you say is, where is bill there? Because that is the bill I want. So let me get your quick take on the former president's.
Yeah, you do recall that when we took the seat, I was searching for that bill in particular because I wanted to see what really is it that they're putting there for former president benefits and other amenities. The population, the people should understand that the former president benefits and other amenities bill is a separate bill from the pension of the president. The pension bill of the president is separate from this bill. The pension benefit bill talks about his pension singularly, so to speak. So that will be 7/8 of whatever is a sitting president's salary. So whatever is the sitting president's salary, the former president gets 7/8 of that. In this instance, it's right now around $2.3 million as a former president's pension. Complementing the pension is the former president's Benefit and Other Amenities Act that currently exists. And in that act, it speaks to the president enjoying light bill, water bill, telephone allowances, all to the tune of $25,000 each. So 25 for light, 25 for water, 25 for electricity. It speaks to medical expenses. It speaks to medical expenses covering, I think, $200,000 or thereabout. It speaks to 2 first-class airfare ticket per year. It speaks to a gardener. It speaks to an attendant. It speaks to technical staff if needed, and several other benefits and other amenities to complement the pension, which is indexed to that of a sitting president. The issue I have with that bill, and I believe the APNU share the same concern, is that there is no cap. There's no cap on these benefits. And I don't think we can be unreasonable to the person who has served, whether it is Irfan, whether it's President Granger, whether it is whoever in the past or whoever in the future. Could very well be David Hines, Terrence Campbell, or Ganesh Mahaipaul in the future. The issue I have is when you leave the space for people to do wrongs. And I have found with the PPP that they often meander their way through laws where there is a silence in the legislation. They then put their own interpretation and they capitalize on it to maximize whatever benefit should go their way at the expense of the ordinary Guyanese. Can you imagine saying to Irfan that, well, not Irfan alone, but all former presidents, that they enjoy any amount of state vehicle maintained by the state, any amount of traveling out of the country to go where? He wants to go to China to probably see Xi Jinping, and he wants to do it once a month. For 12 months, we must pay That's what the law is in its current construct. Uncapped benefit, uncapped facilities and other amenities. And I am saying that we don't have to be unreasonable. But if it goes to a special select committee, we can have reasonable dialogue and we can come out with reasonable positions that can be accepted by the entire House. Now, imagine, Dr. Hines, let me use, well, I wasn't given the permission to use his name, but I'm going to say it this way. A minister of government, a former minister of government that served in this country from 1968 to 1992, straight as a minister all the time, had no unbroken record or anything of the sort. From 1968 to 1992, devoted his life to this country as a minister. His pension and nothing else he gets. His pension is $168,000 because it is not indexed to that of a sitting minister. It is 7/8 of what he was getting at that time as his highest salary. So we want to talk about the president and the service he is giving to the country. On most occasions, it's 10 years because they can't go past 2 terms. And here we have somebody who went from 1968 to 1992, straight as a minister all the time, helped to craft some of the very institution and documents that we're standing on and building from. And his pension is 100. And now he's not complaining about it, mind you. I am just showing you a comparison of how we want to treat one office holder versus those who have served with distinction. Look, I saw Vindi Prasad, the very minister that you have spoken about, who sits quietly in the House, and I do believe and share the same view that I think she has a genuine love for wanting to do good, but she's just trapped in that place there. Her father gave 41 years of service to the National Assembly. 41 years, was a minister. His highest salary was that of a minister. And his pension when he came off did not exceed 100, and I think it was 170 or 170 something thousand. It didn't reach $200,000. And 41 years of service he gave, and he reached to the highest office of being a minister. He was the deputy speaker of the House too. Another person I know who has served, his salary is $55,000, his benefit salary. I'm saying all of this to say to you, Dr. Hines, how can you in good conscience, how can you in an act to try to fix what you claim ought to be fixed, look at it from the narrow lens or the narrow eyesight of just dealing with one office, when you have the highest office holders in this country that equally deserve to live with dignity after serving for how many years or for serving for decades? They equally deserve to live with dignity. So I think the bill is, in its current construct, an unfair bill to the Guyanese people. I think we can look at it from a more holistic standpoint, and we should seek to address the matter more broadly to deal with not just one single office, but service to the people who have served before, who have gone before us, who have toiled in the soil to put Guyana where we are currently. They deserve to live in dignity too.
Ganesh, Mahaipaul, there, Terrence, let me come to you. The government has come back to the National Assembly a mere 3 months, 4 months after the passage of a $1.558, I think, $1 trillion budget, and is asking for more money. Where does the APNU stand on that?
In politics, you don't always answer the question you ask. You digress a little bit. But I want to go back to discussion with the former president's bill. And Ganesh was pointing out to excesses when, a new president, a retired president may want 10 Land Cruisers for himself, and it's unlimited. We have an example. When President Jacques Dieu was an opposition leader, the issue came up of him paying taxes on rent income for property that he owned. And he made the claim that as a former president, and it was an unjustified claim, that as a former president, he didn't have to pay taxes on that rent. The law is he doesn't have to pay tax on his pension, but he extended it. So we don't have to look far to see abuse, even when the law does not say so. So we can only imagine what would happen when the law says that it's unlimited. There is a clause in the 2015 Act that not many people have addressed in the public domain, David. And that clause says that if the former president has been convicted of a crime, I think, I don't remember if it applied the level of seriousness to the crime, that he no longer gets these benefits. And the PPP has taken that out. And I think there's an important message in there. The last thing I want to say about that former president's bill is that if it's passed in its current form, and the current president retires, comes out of office, once he starts to draw, those benefits will apply to him, even if the law is then repealed afterwards. So even when the APNU comes to power in 2030 and repeals that law, APNU will still be able to draw benefits under this bill if it's passed in its current form, and the repeal of the law will not affect what he is drawing. So these are some important things that I think that have not really been parsed in the public domain. But I come to your question, and I'm going to answer it broadly. It is a sign, very, very broad. It is a sign of poor planning that after you pass a 1.55 trillion budget, that in less than 4 months after you pass it, or just about 4 months after you pass it, you are coming back for another $55 billion. In fact, in the budget, I believe it's 10 billion, roughly 10 billion allocated to the gas to energy project. And Professor, your planning was so bad, so terrible, that you come back for 19 billion.
19. Two time.
I mean, I spoke about conventions earlier. Man, this level of poor planning, there should be a convention that the government should resign immediately, or at least the Minister of Finance should go. So it is an example of poor planning, and it is also what I consider the financial recklessness of this government, that feels that it has unhindered access to the Treasury and to spend as it sees fit, simply because it has a majority in Parliament, with not even a nod being given to financial sustainability, to intergenerational equity, to putting aside money for economic shocks or anything. This is a cabal-driven budget and a cabal-driven supplementary request on the taxpayers of Guyana.
And Dr. Terrence Campbell there. And Terrence, one last question I'm asking you before we go. We have gone for 3 hours. This is a marathon, and we have kept our audience. This is amazing tonight. Terrence, you got 2 friends. Well, one friend, that is me friend too. She has called me and said, big brother, I want to run this thing by you. You know what I'm talking about. Simona is your friend.
Yeah.
One is me friend.
All right.
And I tell Simona, your place is in this family. A man says my friend too. Right? I just take up my wild cane punchy one time, but you know, say I love you still, Professor. All right? Doc, I love you still. And I know that you have a strong view on those two individuals and where they ought to be politically. Talk to us about that.
You know, I I I think that, let me go broader than just the ELP of Simona Brooms, than the Forward Guyana movement of Amanza. I would even go add throw the AFC in there.
Hmm. Hmm.
And again, maybe for the fourth or fifth time, I say, I'll go back to where you started, that I endorse. We will all have to come together to remove this wicked PPP government. We will all have to, and maybe this is where Judeo-Christian values might be might be an advantage. We will all have to learn to forgive. All right? The Judeo-Christian value was a handicap when we scared to show how we supporting our people. But maybe this is where it could be an advantage, that we will all have to learn to forgive each other, whatever hurt it is that we feeling, right? Or as a, or you know, let me use the local gap. We got to stop being in the feelings and sit down and work together. And I will say this, because like you, sometimes I'm a man feel that I got license to say what I want. I would say that if we think working along with Simona or working along with Amanza is, is a no-go situation, then we are doomed. Because that grand coalition may have people who would more evoke feelings in us than Amanza and Simona. To me, they're the least of our problems about what such a future coalition may have to look like.
Ganesh Mahaipaul, I didn't. Sorry, I thought you were finished.
No, go on to the guy.
Ganesh, I didn't intend for you to weigh in on this, but that would be politically incorrect. Are you in your feelings when it comes to Simona and and the AFC and Amanza? Talk to me.
Well, I think Dr. Hines that you have known me for quite some time. We shared the political stage in 2011. You remember quite vividly at Plaisance and
Yes.
other areas. Terrence is correct. There is need for us to recognize that, and you are correct too. There is need for us to recognize that unseating the PPP is what is more important than anything else at this point in time. And history has shown us that a grand coalition is indeed necessary for us to achieve that. And Amanza is not an enemy to the PNC, as I do believe Simona Brooms is not an enemy to the PNC either. They are people within their own rights in their own parties that they have formed, and they're looking for support for their own party. They're looking for presence in the political space that is there. And in their act of looking for presence, they are trying to grab from the PNC, and that is what is antagonizing the PNC main support, the PNC diehards, if I may use it that way. You know, it's not easy. You got to guard your turf. You got to guard your base, as you rightly said, protect your base. And clearly, Amanza and Simona, they're throwing their bait and they're fishing in the PNC waters, and that can be antagonistic to diehard PNC. But I say to you, I say to Terrence, and I say to the viewership, they're not real enemies of the PNC. They're not real enemies of a grand coalition. A grand coalition is what will indeed unseat the PPP. And I believe at the right time, we are going to achieve that grand coalition to unseat the PPP and take our rightful place in government.
On that note, I think is quite appropriate for us to bring this conversation to an end. For now, I'm so glad that you all accepted the invitation to come on to this program. Like I said, we've been going for 3 hours. I know this audience very well, and I know that they could take the APNU for 3 hours. And I deliberately, as an old political hand, I deliberately took this program to the length tonight to really test the relationship between the APNU coalition and our supporters. I'll give you each 40 seconds. Closing thoughts. I'll start with you, Terrence.
Coalition. You know, let me say this. Hold on. Winston Churchill went to the boys at Eton, and suppose he only said but 7 words in his speech, and then he sat down. Never give up. Never, ever, or something like that. Never, ever give up, and he sat down. In my 40 seconds, coalition will take us to victory. Good night.
In addition to what Terrence said, I want to appeal to our people. Don't fight with others that are sharing the same views as you in the public space. There are different ways and means of us getting our points over. And Dr. Hines, you and I fighting in the public space will do us both no good, nor our parties any good. Terrence and I fighting in the public space will not do the people who depend on us any good. So my appeal to all those who are against the wicked, cantankerous, devious, diabolical, and dangerous People's Progressive Party, getting them out of government requires us not to fight each other in the public space. We must build, strengthen our base, and move in the direction of unseating them. And I think I took 30 seconds of saying that. So you have the last 10 now.
And I will take the last 10 to say why I am proud to be a Guyanese and a West Indian. Winston Churchill has been cited here tonight more than once by our brother Terrence Campbell. And I want to tell our audience, when England was facing its worst times, Winston Churchill called on the words of a West Indian, Claude McKay, if we must die, then let it not be like hogs, hunted and penned in an inglorious spot, while round us bark the mad and hungry dogs, making their mock at our accursed lot. Claude McKay, the poet from Jamaica, cited by the warlord of the West in the 1940s. Today in Guyana, well, I would get off if I say if we must die, let it not be like hogs, because they know I can't anchor us. But they will drive fear in some other people if they cite those fighting words of Claude McKay. Immortal, with our backs to the wall, dying, but fighting back. Claude McKay, you learned something here tonight. My brothers, thank you very much. My leaders, thank you very much. We shall prevail. Always, always. Thanks much.
Thank you, Dr. Hines.
And to you, our audience, all I can say as we go, I love you all. Keep the faith. Keep the faith. There is nothing under the sun that we can do without faith. Nothing we can't do without faith. Love as always. We're going to do this together as we've always done.